Most states have now finished counting, the senile-old man is now president-elect, and there are absolutely no fraud or cheating anywhere at all. The MSM told us so. Oops. Yeah, no. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and all of the others can deny all they want there has been no severe improprieties or outright cheating. We know there is, since the usual suspects are present and every single one of the quote-unquote problems are overwhelmingly favoring Democrats. For me, it all started on the night of the 3rd when the God Emperor was leading in every single battleground and I went to bed. When I sat at my computer again, my first words were, what is this shit? In every single battleground, there were huge gains towards a Biden victory. Was I really to believe a guy who hid in his basement most of his campaign and could barely gather a few dozen people at his rallies, beat the guy who had an unprecedented number of people showing up for him? Well, because I'm not an idiot, I went to check and, of course, there is fuckery afoot. In Wisconsin and Michigan, each got an increase of over 130,000 ballots cast entirely for Biden, not a single one for any of the other candidates, and after the offices had been closed for the night. Because, we can possibly have multiple shifts to see whose leader of the most powerful country in the world is going to be, can we? Media quickly claimed this was just an error and had it corrected, but I didn't actually see a change in the number, and the sleepy man kept gaining and gaining and gaining to the point where states such as Georgia, a state that had not voted for Democrats since 1996 and had a 10% lead, flipped blue. Now obviously this is already very suspicious, but the Dems took a big spanking in the House and the Senate maintains its Republican majority. Am I seriously expected to believe the American people put their trust in a party that was permanently changed by the God Emperor, but not re-elect him? That makes no sense whatsoever for me. And sure enough, turns out we already have massive election fraud and or procedure violations on camera. From observer being prevented to observe or even enter the building, can't have the opponent seeing our shenanigans after all. With ballot being filled in the counting office in front of cameras, to the classics such as the dead voting, people voting multiple times, or simply people who don't have a right to vote in the first place. For the record, no American has lived in my apartment in 20 years, according to the building manager, and yet a few months ago I requested a pair of ballot request forms for the Miami-Dade County. One of the most important things is obviously going to be the recounts, which I think we all know is going to be triggered in most of the battleground states given how close they are. For example, Georgia has barely a 0.2% gap, Arizona is within 0.5%, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are below 1%, Nevada and Michigan are a bit over 2%. If I were a gambling man, I might think the Dems, after learning how many votes they actually needed to forge on the 3rd, made just enough not to trigger the automatic recounts, and the strategy now is to force the Trump campaign into a financial impasse. But even that is not really a good strategy because in most states, if substantial errors are found, the money is refunded. And I would hope flipping back a state to red constitutes more than a substantial error. Problem is, like always, the Dems probably shot themselves in the foot by, shall we say, relaxing the vote-by-mail rules. They have created such a massive mess, with counting continuing way past the election dates, Pennsylvania actually ordering to separate the ballots received late because Project Veritas uncovered multiple postal services are involved in mass ballot fraud, that it is very difficult for a judge to not say a recounting is pretty much mandatory at this point. So when Trump and his team come in front of the court and say, look at this mess, we gotta recount, I don't really see how any judge can pretend this was clean in any way, shape or form, especially considering the mountains of testimony and video evidence of tampering with the election. Most importantly, like Razorfist pointed in one of his streams, mail-in ballots get discarded by the bucket, so many of these very close states are almost certainly going to flip back to Trump, considering the Dems voted mostly by mail. And by the way, I don't mean that your vote should be discarded just because you voted Democrats or by mail. What I'm saying is, you should quite frankly ask for the heads of the Democratic leaders because they made such a mess in the first place. But the one that I find the most interesting is the quote-unquote glitch that gave Biden 6,000 votes meant for the Donald. And I am not just saying that because I'm a computer engineer. That glitch seemed to have happened after a last-minute vendor update. Funny how they always favor the Dems. In the county of Antrim in Michigan. Why is it so interesting, I hear you ask? Well, because Antrim is freaking tiny. It is not even 24,000 inhabitants, and the software, Dominion, is used in over half of the Michigan counties, 47 out of 83 I believe, and all of the contested states plus a bunch of others normally considered safe are also using it. I cannot overstate how important this is. If we take this tiny county as an example of the failure rate of this software, we have 17,000 votes with a failure rate of 35%, and this software is used in all of the contested states. So take it with a grain of salt, but I ran my numbers on my trusty Excel sheet, and grab onto your socks. Assuming the same failure rate, if this glitch is present in only 1% of the counties within a state using it, which I think is way below the actual number, then it means Trump is right. He has won the election. Easily. And I remind you, this is not even taking into account all of the mail-in ballots that would be discarded. If this bug is present in just 4% of the counties within a state, in all of the states using it, Trump outright landslides. A recount is absolutely needed in every single of the swing states just based on that. But don't forget, the real power is not in here. It's there. And I expect the House Democrat ranks would be even more decimated if it were to happen. So don't lose hope, do not listen to the media, because I would be very surprised if nobody in Trump's team noticed this very simple statistical point. But in case they didn't, hit the subscribe button, the bell, leave a like, and maybe someday I too will have enough reach to count as foreign interference. In the meantime, remember, the Emperor protects. Salut, bonsoir!